Divided here on Orange Bloods Live. Chad, did that come out okay? Because my screen froze for a second.
I don't know if it was
so weird.
I don't know if it was a freeze or I don't know if it was a mute, but I did not hear the magic word, so you might want to reset.
F you, Restream. Yo! We're back. It's House Divided here on Orange Bloods Live. That was really weird. My screen just froze for 5 seconds because as a studio, Restream literally sucks the life out of my computer. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Chad Hastings. Most of you have no idea what I'm even talking about. It's very insider-ish trading kind of things going on there. You'll just have to accept it for a little bit. Glad to be with you on a Tuesday. Like, subscribe, comment, jump into the Specs chat, do all of those things. And by all means, super chat it up. We love your super chats. We'll almost stop the show entirely for $1 or $2 because that's how we roll. Chad, did I even say our names? I'm Jeff. He's Chad.
You did. Yes, you got.
My
you got
brain is a little scrambled, Chad, because when we got off the show yesterday, I was challenged with creating a top 10 athletes list for all 50 states.
Oh my God, I know. I saw that. I've got to buy or sell about a little nugget of it, but I cannot believe you dug through all the other 49 states and then ranked them and came up with a top 3. That was incredible.
I'm sick, and that is just how things go. But I'm going to give everybody my sickness today. We're talking football, and we're talking a lot of high school football recruiting. The Longhorns. Mm-hmm. It's kind of do or die time. We did that video last week talking about the confidence levels of, by the way, that discussion blew up on Orange Bloods over the weekend. I didn't know that it would run twice the amount of traffic as the War Room, but you know, the idea that people behind the scenes are very, very confident on the recruiting side of things. Tomorrow's a big day. Khyree Lockett makes his announcement. It feels like one of the first big real announcement dates since the Decorian Moore announcement. Everybody kind of knew that Riley Pettyjohn wasn't going to pick Texas, so it was a little anticlimactic when he announced after Decorian Moore a couple of days later in that first week of July that he was going to Ohio State. But it's been about a month, a little more than a month.
Yeah.
Decorian Moore kicked Texas fans in the balls.
Right. And to be fair, Catch, Decorian Moore didn't really give a ton of advance notice, correct?
Yeah.
Not this much.
It wasn't a build. I mean, Lockett has had this date on the calendar for a while. So, yes, those two things not exactly the same. But we're getting ready to enter this stretch for Texas football recruiting in August when basically all of the key remaining targets are set to announce. Now, who the hell knows what happens in September, October, and November leading into December. But everybody will be claimed and off the board for the most part. So it feels like a big test. I feel like there's a lot of Texas fans who feel like they've been put through the ringer a little bit with some of the announcements that have already gone down. This recruiting class is not at the level that Texas fans would, I think, have demanded / expected coming off of the season they had last year. It feels like Khyree Lockett either kickstarts the momentum that can potentially run all through the month, because the title of this episode, the show today, is, can Texas get all of the 5 stars? Will they land all of them? It's not impossible, but you have to start with the very first one that announces. Come on down, Khyree Lockett. When we do the show tomorrow, it will largely be centered on the announcement of Lockett, who will make his announcement as we go on the show, on the air tomorrow.
Yeah, and we thank Khyree for that many, many times, and we'll do that again. But yes, 12 noon, right when we start. Tomorrow's recruiting hour show at 10 a.m. We'll be kind of previewing what's coming. I'm sure we'll hit some other names besides Lockett, but that'll be the big focus. And then, yeah, right as we start this show tomorrow, Khyree Lockett will, I assume, be organizing, there'll be some kind of streaming video. There'll be some kind of, hat, coat, shirt, family member in gear, one of those events, and he will let everybody know, at least for the time being, where he will be committing. And he's got a big 5 set up. Both sides of the house divided are a part of that 5. LSU, Bama, Florida State, the other 3 for Khyree Lockett. And he's a badass. Catch, somebody had a good chat about him in terms of a receiver comp. I wanted to ask you real quick, in terms of the energy, in terms of the importance, and what this could start to do for the class. How do you contrast it to Colin Simmons? Because I know you might tell me it's not that big, but how close is it to what we might have seen last year with that one?
I don't think it is at all.
Okay.
Colin Simmons, Texas has had 5-star wide receivers, as recent as Jonte Cook, but even Ryan Wingo was a 5-star by 24/7 last year. They've had and I think Texas fans are almost at a point with wide receivers where they know no matter what happens with one, Steve Sarkisian will have others. That all you had to do is watch what they did in the portal this year, watch what they've done in recruiting in previous years. They were never, plus if they didn't get Colin Simmons, then what? There was a drastic drop off behind if you don't get Colin Simmons. You have to also remember they weren't doing all that great in the state of Texas last year. So it felt like, man, if they don't get Colin Simmons, what does it say about in-state recruiting? It's actually the in-state recruiting is not much better this year. It's a weird time in the state of Texas in recruiting. There's no dominant team. Texas A&M, and Oklahoma have all been kind of afterthoughts in state. That's just never happened before. I don't know what to compare that to. I don't have an analogy. It's very strange that we usually talk about the state of Texas through the prism of, does one of those 3 teams have its foot on the throat of the other 2 in recruiting? Strange that this is a year where the foot is on the throat of all 3 by out-of-state teams. Look, and even when we look, other than Michael Fasusi, right? We look at this and we go, it's probably Texas, Alabama in the battle for Khyree Lockett. It's probably Texas versus Miami for Jamie French. Michael Terry is Texas and Oregon. Jonah Williams is a flood of teams. It's Texas, but it's LSU, and it's Texas A&M, and it's Oregon. So that one may be the most, just wild of the remaining 5-star discussions. And then there's Fasusi, which is the most traditional. It seems like Texas versus Oklahoma with A&M mixed in. That is the one recruitment out of every recruitment this year among the high-level players in the state of Texas where you look at it and you go, yeah, no, that's the way it's supposed to be. The 3 big dogs all going at it to get the big 5-star. It's happening with Fasusi, not so much with the others.
Some good chats already coming in. People piling in to the Spec chat. We appreciate you. Super chats will go right to the top of the list. Catch, I like this one from one of our best chatters. Vivek, is Lockett a better prospect than Cook at wide receiver? You just mentioned Cook. How would you compare those 2?
It's very close. I bumped Jonte. I would say I had almost the exact same ranking on those 2 guys going into their senior years. I had Jonte Cook as a high 4-star that I elevated into the 5-star rankings once he was able to be seen as a senior. Kind of in the same position with Lockett. I think he's a potential 5-star target. I don't quite have that grade on him. He's been just literally from the first time I did my rankings through this most recent set of rankings I've done in the state of Texas in the exact same position. There's been no real fluctuating. So I think they're about the same. They're not. I look, I guess, at Cook. I think he's a little more vertically explosive. I guess that if I was trying to think of how I would compare the 2, he's more combustible although I think Khyree Lockett after the catch is amazing, there's an elegance to Khyree Lockett at the wide receiver position. His ability to catch the football, I think, is a little bit better. I think his body control is a little bit better there. He might even be better after the catch than Cook, but Cook is so explosive before the catch that oftentimes after the catch, there's nothing left to be done. He's just gone, right? Yeah. Like how is he after the catch? Well, he's great. He's straight line into the end zone. Whereas Lockett is, I think, maybe better in a phone booth. Although, again, not, I think, maybe as vertically explosive as Cook, but as different styles. But I think really from how would I rank them, virtually the same.
Vivek, thank you for that chat. Also, thanks to Brad for just admitting his addiction. I'm addicted to OB Live. Thank you, Brad. We appreciate it. We are glad to feed that addiction. And to Binks, the chatter, we're saying super chat, but thank you. Yes, absolutely.
In a world where there's a super Chad, do I shrink and you explode like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man so that I'm like Beetlejuice waiting for his ticket at the bottom of my screen and you just fill? No. See, now that looks like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. You've got to like zoom into the camera and I've got to miniaturize myself.
Hang on, let me see.
What have you done?
I'm messing with it. How about that?
No,
is it that one?
There it is.
Is it that one?
That's Super Chad.
Super. Okay, so hold on. So you got to get the moment. You have to have the moment it happens when you go to Super. No, that's not it. Super Chad. Right there.
Stop messing with it. Like that bit fell on its face a little bit.
Yeah, it's what
it happens.
You're nice to call it a bit. You're nice to even say that was a bit by the time I got done with it. That wasn't even close to a bit. Binks says super chat will never amount to super Chad. No, Binks, what we need to establish is what a super chat looks like. And I'm going to say that's a 5 spot. That's a $500 super chat.
I disagree.
Super Chad. What is it?
A super Chad is when somebody gives $20 and asks for a musical request.
Oh, I see. You're bringing it way down. I was trying to get 500 bones, and you're just trying to get.
I thought you said 5, like $5.
No, 5, like five Benjamins, like $500.
Well, we ain't never going to see the super chat at that pace.
Yeah, I know, and I'm not that super, so fair enough.
Wait, you got to wait till it's a game night, and Texas wins, and then you throw the idea of the $500 super chat.
Yeah.
Chad. Super chat out there, and somebody will do that. But man, it's noon in August.
I know. That's true. It's absolutely true. Thank you, Binks, for the love, and thanks to everybody now up over 300 folks in that Specs chat. Catch, before we get back to the conversation, why don't you give the folks a little back-to-back Rogue Shop? You told them about it yesterday. Why don't you tell them about Rogue Shop again today and all they can do for them?
Hey, scan that QR code right now and let the good times roll. It's real simple. First of all, I just love the guys at Rogue Shop. They're good people. They're orange bloods. They support Texas football. They live and die and breathe by Texas football. They're one of you. When you shop with Rogue Shop, you are shopping with you're keeping it in a family, so to speak. That they have a great product is just like a cherry on top of the sundae. Pain, anxiety, lack of focus, sleeplessness. They've got stuff that's going to make things a little bit better, but you got to scan the QR code. You've got to go to the website, check it out, do a little bit of shopping. Look, start small. Get a gummy or two and find out if it helps you sleep better. Get the salve. If you find you're like, man, my shoulder's been hurting. It hurts when I sleep. Buy some of the salve. Put it on your shoulder and see if my 85-year-old uncle is wrong about the product that he just depends on. One way or another, there's something there for you. They are an amazing partner of orangebloods.com and Orange Bloods Live. And we want them to have nothing but success. So scan that QR code now.
Ooh, I like the now.
I was like, I don't know. I channeled the devil there for a second.
That was really good. Yeah, I was gonna say Satan at the end of the spot. Do it now.
Somebody scan the QR code. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Do it or the devil will get you.
That is it. All right. So, oh my God.
I had a question for you, Chad.
Yes. Found its kryptonite. Yeah, everything is my kryptonite, Binks. There's nothing that's not. You got to find out what's not my kryptonite. Also, thanks to Jerry for paying attention to the show to this level. Super Chad, superpower. If he becomes Al Michaels. Well done. Well done. Well done. Well done, Jerry.
Sometimes when you just say things,
that's good.
You never know it in real time that they're going to become things.
He's right. Exactly.
The Al Michaels, I have a feeling that's going to live on forever.
It might. I feel like it might be there. And for some reason, our guy Buck Wild says, I feel like Super Chad is more Ric Flair. Well, it could be. Woo! Yeah, it could be that. It could be a little more Ric Flair. Styling and profiling.
Oh, it's more Dusty than Flair.
Kiss stealing, wheeling dealing.
When you channel your inner Dusty, it feels like Super Chad.
That's a little more of the Super Chad because I don't do as good of a Ric Flair as I do Dusty Rhodes. I do a better Dusty Rhodes than I do.
And you can't help because you get into it in character in a way that it lifts the energy up in the room.
Yeah. Somebody's saying, why not Super Chad as Howard Cosell? Text guy, you just had to be there. You had to be there. You had to be there for that one. It was a good one.
I thought I'm not even going to explain what happened. I'm just going to say because I thought Al Michaels is Al Michaels. Like it wouldn't be insulting if you picked out a name of the number one person that may arguably in the history of the industry.
Yep.
Do you believe in miracles for God's sakes?
Yeah, absolutely correct. It was both absolutely 100% correct and 100% unnecessary at the same time. Like it really was that. It was like toasting your wife at your anniversary dinner and saying, honey, I love you. You're not Cindy Crawford, but you are my wife and I love you. It's like, well, yeah.
Now, look, it really was a little bit like that. I didn't intend for it to be, but that's not an unfair analogy.
It was fantastic. All right, I'm sorry. You said you had a question for me.
I just feel like I should grovel for forgiveness and that it never comes up again.
No.
The headlines, will Texas land all the 5 stars? Is there a question or a 5-star that you're most interested in and having a discussion? I have one in my head.
Okay. The question I was going to ask you is we've discussed it many times enough to know that, or for me to know, you think Fasusi's the most important guy. You've talked about that. He's the most must-have guy for Texas in your mind. My question was, who's the next one? Out of these other 4 guys where we've got, 3 receivers and a badass safety in the discussion, is there another one for you where it's like, okay, get Fasusi, but then also, you know what? It's pretty damn important to get blank.
It might be more important. I think Jonah Williams is the best talent remaining we're talking elite of the elite, right? All of these guys are ranked as a 5-star by somebody. Even if I don't, or even if Rivals doesn't, some major service has all of these guys ranked as a 5-star. I think Jonah Williams is the best of the players not named Michael Fasusi. I think Lockett's the most important, though. It's next.
Yeah.
And
it could start things moving.
Well, I'm trying to imagine what it feels like tomorrow if Khyree Lockett doesn't pick Texas. Let's say he picks Alabama. And I think some real negativity starts to seep in before the next round of commitments in a couple of weeks when Fasusi and Williams make their announcements. Texas needs a Lockett so that they can justifiably suggest that momentum is occurring, and man, you want to hop on while you can. Without Lockett, it does feel like they're just kind of meandering their way through all of these announcements. It's like, oh, Texas feels good about this guy, and then he commits elsewhere. It's like, oh, what happened? And with every guy, there's been a reason or an excuse. And you know what I say? Sometimes an excuse is just the reason why something happens. They oftentimes are the exact same thing, and one is just explaining why the other thing that it is occurred. They've got to get Lockett tomorrow, because I think then you can't say, will Texas land all of the 5 stars, and then tomorrow they'd lose the first one that makes its decision, because then it's like, I guess the answer to that question was no.
Yeah, unless you flip him before December, obviously.
So I think that's it's a great question. It's the reason why I asked you that question, because I knew you'd probably be thinking about this a little bit different than I am. Williams is such a free roll. If you're Texas, it's like walking into an expensive restaurant but finding $100 on the floor.
Would you agree with this? Would you agree with Vivek's chat about Jonah Williams? Just a more rare breed than the other 3 guys.
Yes, Jonah Williams is a unique prospect that doesn't come around every year.
Okay.
But Texas has recruited in the defensive backfield really well in the last few years. When we're doing practice reports, we talked about this yesterday, and Jelani McDonald is running with the second team defense. It's like, well, yeah, because that guy was a national top 50 guy. And the expectation when he committed was that he was going to be a badass, and it wouldn't take long for him to get on the field. And, you know, Jordan Johnson-Rebel is another guy that was a nationally, I won't say elite prospect. He wasn't that good, but Sarkisian mentioned his name yesterday. And I was like, well, yeah, no, they've recruited safety well. We mentioned that yesterday because Xavier Filsaime is a 5-star that they have on campus that's a freshman, and his name hasn't been mentioned while the other freshman safety has. It speaks to how well they've recruited. I think it's the same at the wide receiver position. You know, wealthy people problems in college football is missing on DeCorian Moore or Khyree Lockett or Jamie French and going, well, I guess we'll just have to live with Jonte Cook and Ryan Wingo and whatever the hell we get in the portal. I mean, really rich people problems. Like, oh, my yacht crashed.
I've only got 3 people working on the yacht. I want 4.
Have you seen Jerry's yacht?
Other than the draft night when he was in it, no.
I mean,
not lately.
You look at Jerry's yacht and you're like, you know, that thing could sink and it wouldn't impact his life at all.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, oh no, what am I going to do? The yachts that Jerry would just, he would just go get another yacht. Oh, well.
Yeah.
You know, the whole point of owning America's team is that when a $1 billion yacht sinks, it's an opportunity for another one to come into your possession. Texas is like that at wide receiver. There's one guy that they're recruiting right now of the remaining board that is just different. I think it's Michael Fasusi. And what's interesting about that is Texas has recruited well at the offensive line. And next year, it's a really good offensive line class in the state of Texas. And, you know, there almost will certainly be another 5-star offensive line tackle prospect in the state of Texas next year. Turntine is a guy that the Texas Longhorns look really good with. I think if you were going to put a future ball, a crystal ball or a future cast in right now, you would almost definitely pick Texas. And that kid's out of North Crowley, and we've talked about North Crowley a lot. It's like, just because I used to spend a lot of time in North Crowley. And when I was a kid, Chad, every time I went to North Crowley, it felt like the Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah. It doesn't feel as out there as it used to.
Now it feels like a suburb. But back in the day, it felt like you were entering a transport into the 1920s or 30s. It was just so I can't help but bring it up every time a kid comes from the Crowley area because, believe me, when I was a kid, it was hard to imagine that anything could come out of Crowley, Texas.
Yeah, Catch. There's so many places in that Dallas area that when I was growing up in that area felt little, felt small, and felt country. They ain't that anymore. No. You go through those areas, and I'm like, wait, Red Oak is that? Midlothian is that? And then you bring up a great one, North Crowley, that whole Crowley area. It felt so country and out there when I was in school. Not now.
And it seems like there's a big time guy that comes through that area every year now, and Turntime will be the guy next year. The thing is, Fasusi's almost a perfect left tackle prospect. Somebody asked me the other day if he was the 6-star offensive line prospect that Tommy Brockermeyer never was. It's a kick to my soul because Tommy Brockermeyer should have been a 6-star, but he started to have back problems and physical elements while he was in high school. And I and others ignored that. It needs to be a gigantic red siren that's going, woo! Every time a big guy starts having those problems, wasn't better than I love it when I amuse you.
Wow. I just imagining somebody that just clicked in like right at that moment. And that's all they heard.
There's a tornado coming.
That was that a tornado siren? Was that him imagining what it sounds like when the Arkansas fans call the Hogs? Like what exactly was that? That had some.
The sound I make when fellatio is performed.
That had some chest to it. That's some bass.
That's the sound that should go off whenever a big guy has issues like that. It was an issue with Mason Walters. You can go back through history and go, God, you know what? Those injury issues we're picking up with big guys. You're welcome, Tex Guy 2. And
Me too. That got me.
But I bring all of that up because Fasusi doesn't have any of that. This isn't a guy that's any injury elements. He hasn't played his best football, but he's really, really good.
And see, Daryl was right there. He literally clicked it right as you did it. Daryl, we're sorry if that freaked you out, but hey, there you go. Yeah. Jerry my wife just asked if everything was all. Oh, that's good. And our man Harish says that was very impressive. It was.
Say, you never know what you're going to get on House Divided. Oscar for $9.99. How much does a position coach's record of NFL players matter when our DB recruiting is great, but sometimes O-line when questioning why we're getting so many 3-star prospects under flood? Well, yes, position coach's record of producing NFL players matters. In fact, you'd probably say that may be the reason more than any other that Fasusi isn't a complete slam dunk to Texas. That their position coach at Oklahoma, Beatonbaugh, he's one of the top 2 or 3 offensive line coaches in the country. That whatever Kyle Flood's record is, and it's really impressive. I mean, he has a long history of developing players into first-round level guys, and Kelvin Banks will be the next. So does Oklahoma. So it's really important. I think the thing you've always got to realize with Kyle Flood, he's like me and Miley Cyrus. We both have types. Mm-hmm. When you ask me, like, it's not – there's real consistency. It's like, boy, Ketch sure does like Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman and Miley Cyrus. It's like, oh, he likes women that do yoga. He likes legs. He likes flat stomachs. Like, those are the things that he likes. Kyle Flood has a type. He loves big men, fat men, large humans. They go by a lot of names, but 350 plus. is typically where they live. Cam Williams, Andre Kojo. You can go through all the classes. He likes big dudes. He'd buy them by the pound if he could. And so you always have to start there. Flood would rather they be big and they can figure it out later than almost any other type. And, I think he just feels like I'll make them maulers. But in order to be a mauler, they have to have enough size that they can absolutely maul somebody. Think about Dan Neal, Chad.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably the best offensive lineman in the history of the Texas football program.
Bad.
In fact, he probably is, for my money, the best offensive lineman I've ever seen in the Texas football program. And I say that with all due respect to Leonard Davis and Mike Williams and Connor Williams and Sam Cosme and Justin Blaylock and Jonathan Scott and Derek Dockery. But Dan Neal wasn't a mauler. That's not what he did. He blocked dudes' asses off. He blocked them out of the way, but you didn't always just see him pick himself off of somebody and go, oh, there's a human being underneath that. That's not what Dan Neal was. I wonder, would Dan Neal have been recruited by Texas in 2024? Because it's not Kyle Flood's type. He likes them monstrous. And, so I think, when you bring up Flood's prospects, the 3 stars, you got to know that all those big dudes usually are dinged because they're big. The recruiting industry let me tell you what, the recruiting industry looks at 350-pound guys and thinks too big, won't be able to adjust. More times than not, they fail more than they hit by big numbers. Kyle Flood just sees, remember in the old days in the cartoons when one of the cartoon characters would be starving and they would look at anything and it would just turn into a big old steak? Yeah. That's what Kyle Flood sees.
The tongue can fall.
Oh, yeah. Kyle Flood sees those big dudes and all he can think of is, I can make that guy a mauler.
The heart's pop out of his eyes.
Maulers on the field, just mauling people.
He also makes
big dudes.
Yeah, he makes that siren sound too that you made earlier. Real quick, back to your siren sound. ZOV said, I pulled over to the side of the road. I thought it was the local tornado siren. This is also somebody paying attention to the show. Phil says somebody's daughter's ready to head to the theater to see Twisters again. Well done. Well done. That means you're paying attention. And Catch, you scared a young man at Whataburger. Scared the young man handing me my food. You got to be careful. He had the bag in his hand. Here, sir. Here's your water. Wow, what was that? What is going on?
There's a tornado.
There's a tornado in my city. No, there's not that. By the way, Chad asked a question about Fasusi. If he comes to Texas next year, will he be the game 1 starter at left tackle in 25?
Oh, God, no. No. Texas is in a very good position where Trevor Gooseby probably, if Trevor Gooseby had just been a year younger, if he was one of those kids that I think Quinn Ewers was 19 when he entered college instead of 18. With Gooseby, you might have, because from the moment he signed committed to Texas to when he reported, he got huge. All of if he can add 30 or 40 pounds but maintain the athleticism, boy, you really would have an elite prospect on your hands. That's what happened to Gooseby, but it happened really fast. Normally, guys like Gooseby are 3-year projects. And ultimately, Gooseby, if you think about it, next year will be his 3rd year. So it will have taken him 3 years to get on the field, which is kind of what we would have said when he was in recruiting if he gets on the field. But I think, man, if there were no Kelvin Banks, Trevor Goosby would be starting right now. And I think that we're going to look at Goosby and talk about him as a guy who was underrated as a prospect. Can't do it yet. He's not a starter. But physically, he's just become the thing that you didn't know he was going to become. So I think when Fasusi shows up, and look, if Texas doesn't get Fasusi, it'll be the depth chart that probably keeps him away. But here's what I would say about to Fasusi. Brandon Baker's nothing at this point to be frightened by. 5-star offensive lineman that they signed a year ago, but he's not really – he's running with the third team right now. He's not – and I don't know that he's pushing to be on the second team in 12 days. So I think one of the things if you're Texas is you got to tell them, look, we'll start – it's almost the Arch Manning speech to a certain degree.
Right.
You're going to say, look, Goosby's going to come in, or the Cam Williams for that matter. Look, he's going to come in. Next year he'll play. Then he's going to go pro. And while he's on the left side, we'll play you on the right side. And then when he vacates, we'll move you over to the left side. It's what A&M did with their offensive line for a while when it seemed like every other year they had an NFL left tackle on their roster. You know, they would play those guys inside. They would play them on the right side. And then if the left side opened up, you've got a left tackle. You just have to move him. I think I would sell Fasusi on the idea that, look, we're going to play our best 2 tackles, and we're pretty certain that you can be one of the best 2 tackles.
Do you think this chat from Vivek kind of holds some water? The immediate playing time availability at OU, is that going to be too hard to overcome?
I have not got that sense. Okay. But if he were to pick Oklahoma, I mean, you can build the case. You can build the case for both schools. And right now say, well, if he picks Texas, why did he pick Texas? And, you know, well, why did he pick Texas? Well, it's a better program right now. It's a top 5 program nationally, no matter what Oklahoma wants to say about beating Texas a year ago and all of the wins that Oklahoma has had over Texas over the last 20 years. The perception nationally right now is that Texas is ahead of Oklahoma, that it is more elevated as a football program right now than Oklahoma is under Brent Venables. You'd be playing with Arch Manning. You'd be living in Austin, Texas. You'd be making more NIL money. You'd be playing with an offensive line coach, just like at Oklahoma, that is among the best in the country at developing players and putting them into the NFL. So there's a Austin and Texas. There's a UT case that you make and you go, God, that sounds pretty good. But if you were to pick Oklahoma, you would say, is playing time more readily available immediately at Oklahoma than Texas? Yeah. But you could say that about Baylor too. The immediate playing time thing for offensive linemen, is it the most important thing for all offensive linemen? I've never sensed that. Otherwise, why would guys keep going to Georgia and Alabama or Texas? I mean, at some point, it's like, well, if I can't play right away. If it's all about playing right away, then you're not consistently picking these types of schools. I think the thing that Oklahoma has going for it perhaps more than anybody else is that Bedenbaugh is a great recruiter. He's a great offensive line coach. There's no other position on that Oklahoma team right now that I think – what position does Venables work with?
That's a great question. Brent Venables. Isn't he I'll look it up, but isn't he a defensive backfield guy?
I think so.
I'll look it up for you.
So a little bit like if you were to compare quarterbacks and you would say, well, the offensive coordinators, it doesn't matter as much as the fact that the head coach is always back there. So if you're a quarterback coach, you'd want to work with Sarkisian. Other than maybe in the secondary because Venables is working there. Because I think you're right. I think he's a secondary guy.
I think I may be wrong. I think it's linebackers. Catch.
Is it linebackers? Okay.
I think it's linebackers because, the Clemson run was DC linebacker, associate line. Yeah, it's linebackers.
What was he when he was at Oklahoma way back in the day?
Co-DC linebacker from 99 to 03.
Right, he's a linebackers coach.
Yep.
He ain't such a good linebackers coach that I automatically knew that.
He's not to linebackers what Saban is to DBs.
Or to his offensive line coaches to offensive linemen.
Right.
But you would still make the case, I think, if you were a linebacker potentially, that, if you're going to Oklahoma, hey, Venables is working with those players. So, maybe there's that extra advantage. Fasusi's so important. Because what you don't want to do if you're Texas is turn into, you don't want this recruiting class to be a Tom Herman recruiting class where it's like, oh, they're a great 7-on-7 team, but where are the big needs in this class are linebacker, defensive tackle, and I think offensive line. They have, at some point you got to start hitting some of the monsters at those positions. And, I don't quite view Josiah Sharma that way, although I know the Texas coaches love that guy. And I don't know if we've completely made this point, hit it home. I think Sharma's the biggest. If you take all of the – matter of fact, let me just do this exercise real quick while I'm thinking about it. I'm pretty sure that if we go to all of the defensive tackles, kind of the elite guys in this – let me just pull it up. Chad, pay a bill and let me do this thing that I'm trying to do. That way it makes sense.
You do a little research, just like I've been doing a little research about getting out to deep Eddy Vodka and the tasting room. Oh yeah, I'm putting the plan together right now because our friend Sherry that we talked about, Sherry's an August birthday, and she's the reason I first went out to deep Eddy Vodka, because that's why we were going out there. She likes the idea because she's smart. She's like, hey, why don't we go out to Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room for my birthday? We'll celebrate. That's what we're going to do this August as well. Get on out there and celebrate whatever you got going on. Birthdays. Maybe it's you still haven't celebrated a graduation. Maybe you want to get, you're celebrating a kid going off to school, whatever it is. They got those great cocktails for you in the upper right there. My favorite's the one on the outside, that kind of margarita vibe with the lime Deep Eddy Vodka. But you can also just sip, do a little, if you want to do some flights, like at the bottom right there, there's all 8 flavors for you to look at. They've got bottles out there if you need to just stock up. They got gear. My wife got a shirt the last time we were out there. Such a fun time. The barbecue's incredible from Crimson Creek Smokehouse. Get on out there to the Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. They're also cooking us up an OB cocktail. I'm hoping it's ready by the time I get out there. They're going to have it ready for the season. Hopefully it's ready for a little bit of the little preseason tasting. I will let you know if I get the chance to have it. Thursdays and Fridays, 11 to 7, Saturday, 11 to 5, Sunday, 12 to 5. Make your plan to get out there and have yourself a good time at the Deep Eddy Vodka tasting room. All right, Cats, did I give you enough time to do your research?
Yes. Thank you.
What do you got?
So in the rivals.com database at the defensive tackle position, there are 31 defensive tackles that are a low 4-star or higher. Of those 31 defensive tackles, none are taller than Josiah Sharma at 6'5", 6'6"-ish.
Okay.
I mean, he's listed at 6'6". The only other guys listed at that level are Elijah Griffin, who's a 5-star, or Malik Autry, who is a 4-star defensive tackle committed to Auburn. But nobody's taller. And of the guys that are that big, Malik Autry is listed at 320. But if you take every defensive tackle in the country that's listed at 6'5" or above, that's ranked among this group of guys, there's only 7 that are taller than 6'4". None are bigger than Sharma. So when we talk about Kyle Flood has a type, the thing that Texas thinks that it has in Sharma is the biggest son of a bitch in the country. Whatever you think, and whatever I think of Josiah Sharma, where it's like, well, I don't think he's a super blue chip, and this is how I would rank him. Texas's number one value at that position was, we need who's going to be our Tavondre Sweat in a couple of years? Who's going to be Sean Rogers? And you can't be either of those guys if you're not big like those guys. And they think, well, look, we don't know what Sharma is, but nobody at that position that we're recruiting is bigger than he is. So it's the quality that they're looking for more than any other. And they do feel like they were able to get that in his commitment. I bring that up because when DJ Sanders makes his announcement in a couple of days, the defensive tackle from Belleville right after Khyree Lockett, totally different type of defensive tackle. He's athletic. He's quick. He gets by without the massive size that they would prefer. He's a different type of defensive tackle. And when we get through the Khyree Lockett stage of coverage and then we move on to the next one, we'll be talking about the decision that DJ Sanders is going to make. But I think it's really interesting that you just go into the database and start playing with numbers and stuff, and it's like, oh my God, well, there really aren't. If I see a defensive tackle that's listed at 6'4", do you know what I typically assume about them, Chad? That they're not 6'4".
That it's being fudged a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's like guys who say they're 6'1". It's like, well, no, are you 6'1"? Are you 5'11"? Like, what are you doing? You're trying to cheat a couple of inches. Remember when Roy Williams came to Texas and it was like, he's 6'6".
Yeah.
Then he went to the NFL Combine and it was like, no, he's 6'2.5".
Yeah.
We see that sometimes. I've told this story when I first got into. Matter of fact, I'm going to pull this guy's name up just so that I can see exactly how big he was in the Rivals database.
Yeah. But you remember that run in the Stoops era where I think it was the receiver position. Every Oklahoma receiver was listed at either 6'1" or 6'2", and then when they ended up in the NFL, they were all 5'10" or 5'11", all of them.
So I think that when I see 6'4" with linemen, I assume, oh, they're really 6'3".
Okay.
When a guy's listed at 6'5" or 6'6", do you know what I think?
That they're actually 6'5" or 6'6"?
No, I just think, well, they're at least 6'4".
Okay.
You know, it's like I assume they're all a little smaller than they're listed. Charles Barkley listed in the game program at 6'6", but more like 6'4" when he had his shoes off. You know, it's rare when guys aren't trying to cheat a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I once covered this guy in the very beginning. Is he even? Oh, he's so old that they don't even have a rival. He was listed. He used to tell people that he was 6'6" as a prospect. This former offensive line prospect that signed with A&M. He signed with Florida State. Excuse me.
Okay.
But he was really like 6'1". So when he was a prospect, he wouldn't walk around tall guys. Because if you're going to claim to be 6'6", the thing you can't do is walk around a bunch of guys who we definitively know aren't 6'6" and then be shorter than them.
Yeah.
So I used to watch Bobby Meeks constantly walk by guys that he towered over, but he was only 6'1". So there was like this optical illusion. But he wasn't even 6'4", let alone 6'6", and everybody trying to squeeze in a couple of inches. That Sharma's so tall that he's even lists himself above that. It just means that from a size standpoint, he's legitimately massive. And a lot of times you see 6'4", 6'3", and it's like, okay, we'll cut a couple of inches off, and they're really 6'1" or 6'2".
Yeah, Logan saying every inch helps. We're still talking about height, right? Yes, Logan, absolutely. Yes, we are talking about height at this very, very moment. That is true. Absolutely true. It's House Divided on a Tuesday. Tomorrow is Khyree Lockett Day. Right at the beginning of the show, high noon, Khyree Lockett will be making his decision. We're talking about that list of 5 stars, five stars that are going to be making their decision. We know 4 of those dates already. Tomorrow, Lockett, Fasusi on the 21st, 24th is Jonah Williams, the 30th is French, and catch Michael Terry. Still, we don't know for sure, but it could be August, correct?
Oh, yeah. All of these guys are expected to announce in August. Even if Terry doesn't have a definitive date.
Don't have a definitive date on Terry. And as Ketch mentioned, DJ Sanders, the big DT out of Belleville, is also going to decide this Thursday. I haven't heard an exact time on that, but he goes on Thursday. Real quick, Ketch. At one point, I know Texas and Texas A&M were both highly interested and highly involved in the whole DJ Sanders thing. Are they both still in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else big time in it?
I think that kid is the feeling has always been that he's going to stay close to home. So I think it's between those two.
Okay. A true house divided battle for a badass D tackle. And now is DJ Sanders a 5-star right now, or is he more that high 4 area?
I think he's more like a mid 4-star.
So not super blue chip for you.
Well, the thing that he's going to have to do, he's got a little Trevor Gooseby in him. What do you like about him? You like his athleticism. You like the fact that, when you watch his highlight tape, you'll see quickness, you'll see speed, you'll see athleticism that allows him to be a playmaker in the backfield. Those guys always give you the warm and fuzzies a little bit. But what he's going to have to do is get bigger and stronger, and he's going to have to change his body type a little bit. That, in college, you can't just knife through the backfield on every play. Sometimes you've got to hold down the point of attack. Sometimes you're taking on double teams, and it's about leverage, and it's about core strength and power. And it's not always about, I'm so quick, nobody can block me. Byron Murphy could get away with that to a certain extent, but then we underrate just how powerful that guy was and how he physically was able to move guys because he was so quick. The expectation with Sanders is that he's going to have to get stronger and bigger. And does that come at a cost? Because usually when guys are playing in that 280, 285, and it's like, well, you're asking them to put on 20, 25, 30 pounds and get stronger and bigger. And a lot of times that comes with a cost. And suddenly the thing that made them really good, their quickness, their speed, their athleticism, has been watered down a little bit because you've thrown a 45-pound plate on their back and asked them to be able to do the same thing moving at that next level size. It's harder to do. It's one of the reasons why when you look at the defensive tackle position, typically the elite guys are elite, and typically the guys that aren't are total crapshoots. I mean, probably the defensive tackle class that's the best example of this is if you think back to that defensive tackle class that Texas signed under Charlie Strong in 2016. Let me pull this up. That was an epic. They signed a crap ton of players. I'm going to pull it up and read off the names. They signed like 5 interior guys in this 2016 class. It was the last class that Charlie had before everything fell apart. The problem was, if you sign a bunch of guys that hit at 25%, how many guys do you need to sign to hit? In 2015, or in the 2016 class, they signed DeAndre Christmas-Giles, who was and still is the highest rated defensive tackle that Texas has signed since Malcolm Brown. I mean, he never turned into a good football player, but he was the highest rated guy they've signed. They signed DeAndre Christmas-Giles, Chris Daniels, Jordan Elliott, Gerald Wilbon, and Marcel Southall as defensive tackles. Only one of those guys hit, and he transferred. Jordan Elliott's playing in the NFL, but he didn't stay.
Right.
Chris Daniels didn't make it. DeAndre Christmas-Giles didn't make it. Gerald Wilbon was okay. Played for a little bit, but was never a frontline guy. Marcel Southall didn't make it. So of those 5 defensive tackles that they signed, the only one that the math says if you sign 5, Chad, and they all are at a 25%-ish chance of making it, how many are you going to hit?
You're getting 1.
Maybe.
Maybe one, right?
Maybe. And the margins on this are such that if you hit 2, it's like you've reinvented the wheel, right? Because you've doubled the projection rate that you're supposed to hit. And these are really slim margins that we talk about when it's like, well, even this year's offensive line class, it's like, well, if you hit if you sign Fasusi and then you hit one of the other offensive linemen at a high rate, high level, that's a really good offensive line class. You've probably accomplished what you need to accomplish in getting 2 big-time starters. Because it's hard. Now, the other thing that happened in that 2016 class, so they signed 5 defensive tackles, none of them panned out. They signed Malcolm Roach as a 3-star defensive end, and he grew into a player that covered their bases a little bit. What I just described to you was a disaster. 5 guys, the only one that was any good transferred. But then they were able to pick up the slack because Malcolm Roach was one of these big defensive ends we've been talking about with Lance Jackson, that maybe he grows into a guy that's more inside and can play some 3-tech. They missed on Eric Fowler in that class. Jeffrey McCulloch never turned into really anything at linebacker. They kept waiting. DeMarco Boyd never really hit. You look at Andrew Fitzgerald. These were the front 7. They signed 1, 2, 7, 8. They signed 10 defensive tackles, defensive ends, linebackers in that class. And the only guy that panned out for him was Malcolm Roach. Oof. And that's the Charlie Strong era in a nutshell. What Sarkisian's been able to do so far is, look, I'm going to do this real quick because I think this is absolute. If you consider that most of 5 stars or the super blue chips, it's kind of a 50-50 deal. So if you sign 20 and 10 pan out, that's about the national norm, give or take a player or two. It's actually maybe closer to 60% than 50%. It really depends on the players. What Sarkisian's been able to do that I don't think enough people have enough appreciation for, because we've talked about all of the super blue chips that Texas has signed in the last couple of years. What's the only reason why Texas played in a playoff game last year is because their success rate on super blue chips has been higher. Think about this. Let's just count them out. Cedric Baxter, if we go from 2019, no, I guess when Sark arrived. So it's Terrence Brooks, who what do we do with Terrence Brooks, who was a starter right up until the moment when he transferred? I don't know. But it's Kelvin Banks, Malik Muhammad, Arch, if DJ Campbell, if you just start Anthony Hill, if you just start going through the list of super blue chip guys that they've signed, they have an incredible success rate at this point. They're hitting on almost everybody, and they're cheating the math. It's the thing that's made them incredibly successful so far. When you go Jonte Cook, Anthony Hill, DJ Campbell, Jatavian Sanders, Bijan Robinson, you start counting them all out, and it's like, oh, they hit on all those guys. Whereas a few years ago, it was Brew McCoy, it was Eric Fowler, it was Jonathan Gray. It was a lot of guys that were missing. These are all 50-50 flips, which means, you ever flip a coin? My daughter and son hate this. We'll do it. We'll flip a coin to make a decision, and we'll go best 2 out of 3, and it'll land on heads 2 times in a row. And the person that loses will keep flip it again, and it just keeps landing on heads. We know it's 50-50, but sometimes heads, if we flip that coin 100 times in a row, eventually these things will even out. But sometimes you go 4 or 5 times in a row, and it just these 50-50s keep landing on heads. That it happens that way in recruiting on the bad side of things. Right now, it's been happening on the good side of things. Texas has just been hitting on all of these super blue chips, mostly at young ages. And it's one of the reasons why we've been talking about Brandon Baker a little bit. And it's like, well, he's a true freshman. He's an offensive lineman. And we noticed that yesterday when Sarkisian was talking about players, young players that stood out, he called out a different young offensive lineman. And there was, it was hard not to notice, oh man, he didn't say Brandon Baker's name. They paid that guy a ton of money in NIL. The reason why that stands out the way that it does is because typically Arch Manning's basically the only super blue chip that Texas has signed in the last 2 or 3 years that isn't on the 2 deep or isn't in the starting lineup and isn't making really big head waves on the field. Texas has not been missing on these guys, and it's been pretty critical. And the math says that if you sign Kelvin Bates and DJ Campbell, only one of those guys should pan out. But when they pan out, the likelihood is they'll pan out and be maybe a first-round draft pick because they're 5 stars. They're hitting with both of those guys. And that's how you accelerate growth. That's how you get as good as quickly as Texas has been able to get. They're just on a heater right now when it comes to bringing these types of prospects in and then them proving their worth. There are very few of these. Ryan Niblett, Colton Vasek to a certain extent, but those guys are so young. It's just really hard right now to look at the Texas roster and point out a bunch of guys that were supposed to be great and haven't panned out yet.
Thanks to everybody jumping in the chat. We do have a super chat that came in a couple minutes ago on the size and height discussion. Thanks, Jay, for your $5. Back in the 90s, while with the Magic, Shaq admitted on the Howard Stern show he was only 6'11", just said 7 foot for the marketing. Also, I like – thank you for that, Jay. I also like this one, Catch. Randy says, you're either 6'4" or 6'6". It's like they quit making 6'5" players at some point in time. That's kind of true. I hadn't even thought about it. Now, for Mark, you're just spreading propaganda. Even JR and the King lied to us about The Undertaker and Kane being 7 foot when they are both about 6'8" to 6'8". How dare you, Mark? How dare you? They were both
professional wrestling would never do such a thing.
No. How dare you insinuate that professional wrestling would stretch the truth at all? These were 7 foot monsters from Death Valley or Parts Unknown or the 7th layer of hell. How dare you? How dare you? I don't even want to live in that world that you're talking about.
Jay Lee's $5 super chat real quick.
Mm-hmm.
It's the reverse Kevin Durant. Because Durant's actually 7 feet, but has refused over the course of his career to let anybody list him as taller than 6'11".
Right, because he wants to seem versatile.
He wants to keep that. They were worried that they're going to make him post up like he's Patrick Ewing.
Yeah, right. They're going to turn me into Manute Bowl, Catch. I can't let him do it.
If Kevin Durant was 7'4", he'd still tell people he was 6'11". It's the only time I can ever remember a tall person underrating their height for weirdly selfish reasons.
They're gonna stop letting me handle the ball if I tell them I'm 7 foot. What are you doing?
They're gonna put him out by the rim. I mean, yeah, Kevin. Historically, you are not wrong. So I totally get it.
That is funny. Jay, thank you for that. If you want to throw us a super chat, we will certainly get it to the top of the list. I don't see any super chats right now. We are over the top.
Can I ask you a question, Chad?
Uh-huh.
Well, finish your thought. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was going to say we're over the top of the hour and we got buy or sell coming up, but go ahead.
On these state top 10 lists that I did.
Yes.
Did you notice that I put Ric Flair number 1 in the state of Minnesota?
I was pretty excited about that, actually. Yeah, really. I'm really happy for you and proud of you for that. Yes. I really enjoyed that.
It just felt like he's the greatest of all time, so he's got to be on the list. Whereas Dusty making the Texas list was almost impossible.
Yeah, that was going to be tough to do. You're right.
But Brock Lesnar had no problem making North Dakota's list.
Whoo! Was Brock number 1? Where was he?
Brock was number 1. I'm pretty sure. I would need to go back and look.
I would assume.
Yeah, I'm assuming that I put him at number 1. I want to say they had an Olympian that ended up making the list somewhere.
Because if there's somebody that has a better, varied kind of career that tops Lesnar out of North Dakota, I want to know who they are. Because, good Lord, amateur, the NCAA wrestling plus the UFC stuff. You can take the pro wrestling and put it to the side for a second, and he's still got to be that guy.
Yeah, because he was an MMA heavyweight champion.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
I didn't even for Lesnar. I just wrote MMA because
right.
I guess it could have been wrestler too. Let me see real quick. What did I have in North Dakota?
Right. Yeah, because it's both. Because he was a double national champion at Minnesota, I think, in wrestling.
No, it wasn't. He wasn't North Dakota. Hold on. He was South Dakota.
South Dakota.
I got the Dakotas mixed up.
You make sure you get your Dakotas straight.
Somewhere right now, there is somebody in South Dakota that's like, don't ever make that mistake again,
That's
you son
right.
of a bitch.
Don't ever screw that up. How dare
So
you?
Brock Lesnar was number 1 in South Dakota. Guess who was number 2 in South Dakota?
Number 2 in South Dakota.
You're not going to guess it.
No.
Adam Vinatieri.
Damn it. If you'd have given me a second, I might have gotten there. Yeah. Adam Vinatieri went to South Dakota State, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. I was trying to think what athlete went to South Dakota, and I almost had it. I was in the NFL, but I hadn't quite gotten there.
Some of these states, like when I wrote Kevin Dyson, the former Tennessee Titans wide receiver, as the number 9 all-time athlete out of Utah, I just felt bad for Utah. Like, you don't have anybody better? There's nobody better.
Come on. Kevin Dyson
he almost caught the game winning.
He almost caught, but he did. Wasn't he the guy on the Music City Miracle?
I'm not saying Kevin Dyson didn't have a good career.
That was Kevin Dyson. Yeah.
I'm just saying I had to keep off LaDainian Tomlinson, Adrian Peterson. There was the number of elite level football players I had to keep off the Texas list. And then Kevin Dyson sneaks into Utah. I just thought it was a little unfair.
That is wild. Yeah, by the way, now you got something started. Phil says Bruiser Brody was probably on the New Jersey list, but he played football at West Texas State.
Believe it or not, New Jersey, they represented themselves pretty well.
Yeah, I would imagine. There's some good New Jersey talent. I got a buy or sell for you about your state list, which we will get to here in just a moment. If you want to throw in
the nerdiest thing I think I've ever done, Chad.
Oh my God, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. But I encourage people to go check it out. Get to orangebloods.com. Check out the article because it is wild to go through each state and see some of the big names and where they come from that you might have, forgotten about. We got some good chats coming in. We will get to super chats. We'll go right to the top. If we get them, buy or sell is coming up as well. But before we do any of that, why don't we hear from AV Consultations? Not just the marital advice, not just the furniture I want, not just the video games, all of it. Here we go.
Hi, this is Tom McKay with Audiovisual Consultations. Today's home electronics can be a bit daunting. My company has spent the last 36 years making sure they are not. For those of you who have not experienced our services yet, we'd like to invite you to give us a try for all your home electronics needs. We carry all the major brands of televisions and stereo equipment at prices you can't find in stores. And we come to you. There's no need to leave your home to find great pricing and incomparable service. No traffic, inexperienced sales geeks, or pushy showroom tactics. We believe in having some fun and dreaming big. You have a dream for your home entertainment? Let us know. We can make it come true. And we are always there to help after the job is done. We cultivate clients for a lifetime by treating everyone like their family. No, not those family members. I'm talking about the ones you actually like. So relax, hug your kids, make love to your wife, and smile. Then, when you have a moment, give us a call at 255-8678. That's 512-255-8678. Or online at avconsultations.com.
Before we get to buy or sell catch, I also wanted to answer a quick question from Oscar, our man over at the 40 Acres. He's acting like he doesn't know. Was there practice today? Later on in the afternoon, Oscar, from where?
3:15.
There you go. 3:15, going heat of the day once again. Check out orangebloods.com for those practice reports and the media window. Hopefully it'll be one of those nice extended media windows, and I'll get you some good pictures and all kinds of stuff from practice. So that's later on today. Catch, speaking of practice and 25 days from kick, how about this for a 25? For the folks that don't know, that's your 25, Texas Longhorn fans. That's Jelani McDonald, who was mentioned, I think, early on in the show today. Catch, he's looking pretty good.
No, look, he should. Yeah. He should. And one of the things that happens in camp right now, and I hate that I do this, Chad, but I look at camp and read the practice reports, and my brain can't help in this new age but to wonder all of the movement that takes place on the roster. What does it mean potentially for the portal? It on one hand, it's kind of I enjoy it. It is almost as if you're keeping the idea of the NFL draft relevant at all times. It's harder to do in the NFL. Yes, there's free agency, but you don't just say to yourself, well, 20 guys from the Cowboys when the season's over, they're just going to leave because they want to. Like, it's a little different. McDonald's a guy that if he weren't doing what he's doing right now, I'd start to ask myself, and I don't even know that I would say it out loud with a lot of, because I don't want to put guys on blast, but because he's not, I can say, you know, if he weren't making plays, I would wonder, is this one of these 50%ers that miss? And if we're talking about guys on campus right now that fall into that category, I don't think they have anybody who's in their third year that we're asking this question about. But there are some second, although maybe Arch would qualify in that he's in his second year, but will go into his third year. So I guess not. But we start talking about second year players. Okay. Well, CJ Baxter's a starter, so you don't really have to worry about him. But wide receiver, Jonte Cook, at this exact moment, this is where Jonte should be taking off. And I think we think he is. He's, I think, projected to be a starter. I would be surprised if he's not. Check. Ryan Niblett, high 4-star guy, isn't in that really crowded room of wide receivers right now. He needs to start flashing a little bit more, or he's going to fall into this category of players that you wonder about. I think there's not really on the offensive line. I think if you go to the defensive line, I think Colton Vasek is entering his second year. Now, it's a crowded defensive end space, so you get it. But, you know, he needs – and he – in the spring, he was a guy that showed a lot of flash. He needs to continue that. I think in the secondary, you would expect it from Jelani McDonald. It needs to happen. It sounds like it is. Guys this year that they brought in, the Xavier Phil Samies of the world, those guys, the Kobe Blacks, if it doesn't happen this year, I think your expectation is, well, it better start to happen by this point in 12 months, or they're going to fall into a category of player that I think we all know what it means. Like, I don't want to say it. I don't want to put anybody on blast specifically, but there are time frames where these guys are expected to start flashing. McDonald, I think, is on schedule. If he weren't, I think we'd be doing a little bit on the show to some extent where it's like, this guy was a national top 50 prospect. He's in year 2. He's not flashing. What do we make of that? Well, I think we know what we would make out of it. The good news is he's doing the thing that you would want and expect from him to do, and you can kind of hopefully set your watch by that. There are some other guys, just a couple, that haven't yet done that, and it's impossible not to wonder, what is that going to mean if at the end of year 2 it hasn't started to happen, smart money is probably those guys enter the portal. I mean, it's just the era that we're in.
If you guys want to send us a super chat, it will go right to the top of the list. We'll get back to the chats after buy or sell. You ready to go, Catch?
Let's do it.
All right, you go first or second?
I will go second today.
All righty, let's start with Texas. Buy or sell number 1. If Texas is 5-1 going into the Georgia game, the loss will have been to OU.
Sell. Man, Michigan is I am picking Texas to win that game, but I'm expecting it to be a bare knuckle fist fight that goes into the fourth quarter. I anticipate a closer Michigan game than I do an Oklahoma game at this point.
I think that might be fair. Catch, speaking of Michigan, buy or sell number 2. The NCAA should throw a hefty fine and a show cause at Jim Harbaugh.
Sell. Fuck the NCAA.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Like, what right. I just save your show causes. Don't. The guy's got a long-term contract with the Chargers. What's a show cause going to accomplish? I'm not a big fan of the show causes. I'm even less of a fan of the NCAA. Save it. They're worthless. They're worthless. And the arbitrary nature of punishing Harbaugh when we know so much else does. Where's Art Briles' show cause? Where the hefty fines? They disgust me.
All right. Speaking of being a fan, Catch, we're about an hour or so away from men's hoops at the Olympics. Buy or sell number 3, U.S. men's and women's hoops at the Olympics. You watch the whole game if you can.
Buy. The thing is, I'll probably have the 200-meter finalists tonight for the women. So I'm assuming that the U.S. men handle their business. I won't watch the entire game because I'm expecting that Gold Rush or the Gold Medal Channel, whatever the hell we call it, that they're going to have it on the 200. I'm all in on Julian Alfred, whether or not she can go on the double on the 100 and the 200.
And that's happening at the same time?
The schedule I've seen, let me double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's like at 220.
Okay, because the men tip it. Yeah, men tip it like 2:30. All right, well, there you go.
There's a little bit of crossover there that is kind of unavoidable. Let me just make sure that I have this right.
I think you just called it. Extra reason to throw the gold zone on if you have it on Peacock.
Tara Davis qualified. She's in the semifinals or is she in the semifinals or the finals? She qualified in the long jump today. Yeah, no, at 2:40 p.m., Alfred is running in the 200-meter final.
Nice. There you go. So definitely a reason to check out that gold zone in case you haven't done it yet. And if you've got Peacock, you can check it out. Catch, buy or sell number 4 in your state top 10 athlete search. The state that pleasantly surprised you in terms of talent was Maryland.
On a technicality, I'm going to sell.
Okay.
Because before I did the exercise, we were talking about it on Orange Bloods, and somebody said, you sent me down a rabbit hole, and I did the state of Maryland, and look at who they have. So before I ever decided that I was going to do this, somebody showed me Maryland, and I was like, damn, Maryland's loaded. So the answer would have been yes.
Yeah. But
from a technicality standpoint, the state that surprised me, let me tell you, the state that would have surprised me, West Virginia kind of surprised me. They're not like all-time good, but it's like, oh, okay. Pennsylvania surprised me. And I don't know that I should have been completely shocked, but the back end of their top 10 is Dan Marino, Johnny Unitas, Onus Wagner, Stan Musial, Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, that's nice. There's no doubt.
There are some bad mother you-know-whats from Pennsylvania that didn't make the list because I had to ask the question, do I bump Reggie Jackson
Right.
to get you on the list? And
Okay.
I just decided I am not putting out a list that Reggie Jackson can't make, but Pennsylvania was really loaded. Now, look, that's a big state, so they should have a big roster. You know who surprised me from a negative standpoint? Florida kind of sucked.
That is surprising.
Their football guys, Dion. First of all, it's like the 1995 Dallas Cowboys. Dion, Emmett, and Michael Irvin all make the list.
There you go.
And then it's Deacon Jones and like Vince Carter's their best basketball player. They didn't have any Olympians make the list. It wasn't Florida when I did it. I could have gone 25, 30 deep. California goes like 100 deep. Texas can go 50 deep. Pennsylvania could go 30 deep. Florida felt like it went about 13 deep. There just weren't many players, high-level athletes from the state of – I was really surprised and disappointed in Florida that, should Michael Irvin on a big-time state? Like, you wouldn't say Michael Irvin would be ahead of Reggie Jackson on the Pennsylvania side, right? You'd pick Reggie, right?
Yes.
So I just felt like Florida, I expected more of you, which, if we're being completely honest, isn't that what we say about Florida in every single realm of life?
Yeah, that might be true. Just to pay off my Maryland comment, Babe Ruth, Michael Phelps, and Kevin Durant are the top 3, and Katie Ledecky is at 5. Go to orangebloods.com and check out the rest of that Maryland list. It is absolutely silly. And Ketch did every state, looked at every state after we talked about the Texas thing the last couple of days. He put Simone Biles on top of the Texas list. Go check out that whole list. It is really impressive. Speaking of Simone Biles, Ketch, buy or sell number 5. Simone and Jordan bowing to a Brazilian gold medal winner on the podium showed how women can care for each other in a way men would never think of.
I mean, we do it with the volleyball clap. Women are better than men. They just are.
Yeah.
And there are men who get upset by that. I've written that on Orange Bloods before, and years have gone by since I've originally said it. And occasionally somebody will throw out that I'm a jerk or that I'm too woke or that I'm a horrible human being because they're holding a grudge because I once upon a time said that women were better human beings than men. I can't believe that that's even in dispute. But yeah, no, look, those women lifted up a woman not from the U.S. and a woman that beat them. And their reaction wasn't to mope. Their reaction wasn't to pout or to what their reaction was to elevate her, to make her moment an even better moment. It's, we don't see that from men. We won't.
And to be fair, we don't see that from a lot of people, that do something like that. The fact that it was Jordan Child's idea was kind of crazy, cool, and organic. Only thing I didn't like about it, Ketch, is NBC didn't get a good video shot of it. We got a lot of still shots, but I really would have wanted everybody to see the moment, the way it played out. They panned in too close. They went in on Rebecca Andrade instead of doing the wide shot. They should have realized it, but they didn't have a good wide shot of it. But it was awesome. And that was a flat, awesome moment. And Andrade's story is incredible. The injuries she's overcome, how she used to have to train. She's a great story too. So,
that was probably Simone Biles' last, although I think she should go for it. Who am I to tell Simone Biles what she should do?
Oh yeah. 31 in LA. And
do it, girl. Go for it.
And unlike the athletes, Ketch, that have a year-to-year thing like a WNBA athlete, if she and her husband are maybe thinking about a baby fairly soon, it's like, okay, well, in the next couple of years, you could have the baby and you could you're Simone freaking Biles. We're assuming you could probably get yourself into Olympic shape by the time you're 31 in 2028.
But to be fair to her, when Michael Phelps was done, because I would have said the same thing about Michael Phelps. I'd be like, Mike, come back.
Sure.
And Michael Phelps was like, man, I want to start eating cheeseburgers on the regular.
Oh, that's what. Yeah. Now, if I was Simone Biles, that's what I would do. That's what I would do. If Simone Biles says to you and me, fellas, LA ain't happening, I'll be there watching, but man, do I love root beer and grilled cheese. Like, okay, cool. Let's go. Let's do it. All right, Cats, that's my 5. What do you got?
Buy or sell number 1, staying with this theme of the top 10 list that I did.
Mm-hmm.
I ranked Jesse Owens as the number 1 all-time athlete from the state of Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And I ranked Simone Biles as the number 1 all-time athlete from the state of Texas.
Okay.
Both of them not in team sports the way we think of like football, basketball, baseball, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
One dominated in one set of Olympics. For those that don't know, shame on you. If those that need reminding, Jesse Owens won the 100, the 200, the long jump, and the 4x1 gold medals in each event at the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. There's no other set of Olympics. He didn't come back in 40 or 32. Like, that's it. That's when he did his thing.
Right.
Now, Simone Biles has 11 medals, 30 world championship medals, including 8 gold medals in 8 different years of all-around competitions. She's the GOAT.
Mm-hmm.
And I put it up on Twitter. Who of those two is the better athlete, I guess? 64.4% say Jesse Owens. And you agree with them. Sorry, Simone.
Yeah, that's a buy. I mean, I'm not dogging anybody out to say you're not quite Jesse Owens there. It almost goes back to the Al Michaels discussion, right?
But it does a little bit, yes.
It kind of does. Yeah, it's because of the specificity of her greatness and her events and her particular sport and the broadness of what Jesse Owens did that I'm going to go with Jesse Owens. He also has in college, go look it up, Jesse Owens has a 45-minute period at a college meet, a Big Ten college meet. That's one of the stupidest things anybody's ever done in track and field. He set or broke like 4 world records in like an hour in 45 minutes, the way they staggered the events. He is an all-timer for me. I'll put him above even Simone Biles.
Buy or sell number 2, Jesse Owens versus Carl Lewis. You'll take Carl Lewis.
It's interesting.
Because Carl kind of did the exact same thing in the 88 Olympics. No, wait, in the 84 Olympics.
Yeah. And then he's the one that went 4 straight 100 wins for him?
He was Carl Lewis is ridiculous. It was
3 straight
at least.
Yeah.
Then.
No, it's silly. Yeah, I'll buy slightly. I'll go slightly Carl over Jesse Owens. That's a close battle, but I'll go Carl.
Just so you know, this is what Carl Lewis did in the Olympic Games, okay?
Yeah.
Gold in 84 in the 100, gold in 84 in the 200, gold in 84 in the 4x1, gold in the 84 in the long jump. So he did the Jesse Owens deal.
He did it.
He just did it in 84. And he didn't do it in front of Hitler or against the Russians.
True.
In 88, he won the gold in the 100, the gold in the long jump. And then in 92, he won the gold in the long jump and the gold in the 4x1. And then in 96, he won the gold in the long jump. So he won the gold in the long jump in 84, 88, 92, and 96.
That's what I was thinking of. That's my bad. I said the 100. No, he didn't do 4 straight hundreds. That would have been insane. No, he did 4 straight long jump golds. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'll lean towards Carl there.
Yeah, fair enough. Buy or sell number 3. Charles Barkley says he's not retiring. He will remain with TNT. And that brings a big old smile to Chad Hastings' face.
Absolutely. Buy. I'll take as much of Charles Barkley talking NBA as I can get. And I think it's one more season and then things transition back to NBC or whatever. And maybe Charles will be done at that point. But yeah, I'm really excited to hear that. Buy.
Buy or sell number 4, Olympics question for you. Novak Djokovic wins the gold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Buy or sell, you think Joker would have preferred to win the gold versus the French Open that he lost, a week ago or 2 weeks ago?
Wimbledon.
Was it Wimbledon? Hey, okay. He lost Wimbledon, but he already has the majors record. So would he have preferred to have won the gold in the Olympics, which he had never done before, versus this goes back to kind of the Scotty Scheffler question that we talked about yesterday. Buy or sell, you think Joker, if forced to choose, would take the Olympic gold over another Wimbledon title?
At this point, I'm going to say buy. If he had no Wimbledons, it'd be different. The dude's got some Wimbledons, and just look at his reaction. Like, I'm not the biggest Djokovic fan in the world, but I've never seen him react like that, winning anything of the 24 majors he's won. There's a bit of a stoicism to him, if not a professional wrestling heel reaction sometimes to the crowd and what's going on. It was just pure joy and crying and go celebrate with the family. So, yeah, I'm going to buy. And then he stood up there and heard his national anthem, and he is Serbian. So being from he's from a country that's dealt with a lot during his lifetime. And there's been, there's a lot of stuff going on with war and all that kind of stuff. So I'm guessing he would absolutely tell us that's a buy.
And finally, buy or sell number 5, back to the discussion of the top 10 athletes in every state. Mm-hmm. California just needs to go off and be its own country at this point. They're so far ahead of everybody else. We should kick them out of the union.
In terms of this discussion, I think it's a buy. Let me just double check the list.
It's so ridiculous, Chad.
Let me just double check it. Oh, here it is. I got it in front of me now. All right. Tiger, Serena, Tom Brady, buy. Ted Williams is 5. Good grief. Bill Russell, Joe D. My God, buy. Here's how much of a buy it is, Catch. The 2 scrubs are Pete Sampras and Lisa Leslie. Like,
no, the thing is, like, as I was putting the list together, I'm not lying. There's like 100 all-time great athletes from California. Yeah. Mark Spitz didn't make the list.
There
are people that think Mark Spitz is a top 10 all-time great athlete, and I left him out.
So Spitz is from Cali?
Yeah. Oh, everyone is from Cali.
Yeah. Just looking at what I just did, you should probably have slipped Mark Spitz into the back end of that list and taken Tony Hawk out, because you could have a discussion about the specificity of his sport and what type of athlete Tony Hawk is based on what he does. That's nitpicking. You probably should have done that because of Spitz and everything he did in the pool. But I mean, it's a hell of a list. The beginning of that list is dumb. When you have Tiger and Tom Brady and you haven't even told the whole story yet, that's incredible.
Let me tell you some of the names that I left off. Okay. Cheryl Miller.
Oh God.
Shaun White. Tony Gwynn. Jackie Robinson. Venus Williams, Mark Spitz, Kawhi Leonard, Michelle Kwan, Jason Kidd, Billie Jean King, Tracy Austin, Nancy Lopez, Olympians like Dara Torres. Like, the Olympic sports are gross. Phil Mickelson, Tony Hawk. I put Hawk in, right?
You did. Yes.
Landon Donovan's the greatest all-time men's soccer player from the U.S. He's in. Yeah. I mean, he didn't make it. Jimmy Johnson, NASCAR. I mean, just it goes on and on.
That's incredible.
And on. It's just ridiculous. Ricky Henderson didn't make it. John Elway didn't make it. Marcus Allen, Duke Snyder, Anthony Munoz, Greg LeMond. It never stops. Did I put Florence Griffith Joyner on the list? I think I did.
No, you didn't.
Flojo
did not make the final list.
Greg Louganis.
Oh, good grief. Yeah, that's incredible.
Tom Seaver, Peggy Fleming, Frank Robinson. I mean,
good grief.
Just doesn't stop.
That's amazing. That is amazing. All right. While we were, that was 5, correct? That was your 5? Yes. Yeah. While we were buying and selling, we had some super chats come in. We will get to those real quick. Let's remind you, it is the Specs chat after all. If you need to get stocked up, check out Specs.
Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
All right, I'll hit these super chats in the order they came in. Matthew, we'll start with you. Super chat $4.99. If you did sports coaches in Ohio, sports coaches, Ohio would be number 1 and it wouldn't be close. I think you're right about that, Matthew. The sport of Ohio has produced a coach or two. Although Nick Saban and the crew out of West Virginia might at least want to
New
talk.
York has got a bunch too.
Who's that?
New York.
New York. Yeah, no, there's a few there. Matthew, though, it's a good call. All right, this super chat is $1.99 from Oscar. Buy or sell Sofia Vergara hotter than Selma Hayek? Well, that's a close one. And it kind of depends on
prime on prime, right?
I'm assuming we're going prime on prime. Definitely depends on what you like. But I like this one. There's similarities, but there's differences.
I'm going to sell and go Selma.
That was my first gut. I can make either argument, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sell and go with Selma Hayek. Oscar, thank you for that. Good, thought-provoking stuff. And that's what we love. A super chat that's also a hotter than. Jay throws this one in. It's $5 on a super chat. I really enjoyed all the LHN pregame and postgame conversation footage and coverage of the team on the field. Is anything going to replace it? Jay, that's a great question. And Catch, I'll admit I don't fully know the answer. I don't think we've gotten full answers on what happens now. Everybody that's got Longhorn Network, the channel has said, this channel has ceased broadcasting for a while. I have yet to hear what the SEC's plan is for SEC Network. Are they expanding the SEC Network? Are they going to use the Longhorn Network as an SEC network? I have not heard about what that's going to be, Jay, but I don't. You got to plan for it not to be as specific. There's not going to be anything that specific that is totally devoted to your team. I totally understand how you're going to miss that stuff. Whatever would have been said about LHN, the specificity of it was incredible. I mean, you were the only group of fans that could say you had that.
Longhorn Network's still going to be an online venture. It still is an online venture. I think Chad's right. I don't think they've outlined what they would do if they're going to do something, but I wouldn't give up hope, Jay. I think it's very possible that they will do a lot of the same stuff that they did before. It's just going to be online. And, how that, some people are completely fine with that and will watch it on their computers and have no issues. Other people might feel like that's a step down, but it's not. They could. I think I would take a wait and see attitude. The next couple of weeks, I would be on the lookout for some sort of announcement with regards to what they're going to do.
Catch, I'll give you something to look. One particular game we could look forward to. That ULM game is a 7:00 kick, and it is ESPN Plus. For people that don't know that, there's a game that's already been set as an ESPN Plus game. It's SEC Network Plus, which is just a fancy way to say ESPN Plus. So if Longhorn Network has content that is streaming, there's a perfect game for you to pair it up or figure out a way to tell the fans, because everything is streaming on that game. So maybe how they deal with a ULM game there in the non-conference could tell us how it's going to go, throughout the season. But Jay, I agree with Catch. Keep looking for that kind of stuff. You may need to go to streaming to find it, but there's probably going to be some of that. Who knows? It may be there with a lot of big-time SEC teams that will have that different access. It's just going to be through streaming. A little over 600 folks in the chat right now, the Specs chat. We appreciate you. That's all the super chats that I saw for now. Real quick, Catch, somebody asked this question earlier. Did y'all watch SummerSlam? Thoughts? You a SummerSlam watcher this year?
So let me tell you what happened.
Okay.
I had SummerSlam on the brain, but there were a couple of other things I was watching on Saturday. I went to watch SummerSlam. I don't know, it was like 10:30 or 11 on Peacock.
Yeah.
And Triple H was doing the post interviews.
Right. They'd gotten to the presser already.
And I just watched the presser because I thought it was kind of interesting. I think I love the idea that there's transparency in a press conference afterwards. It's pulling back the curtain in a way that I just find really interesting. Well, when the press conference was over, they did a highlight package of all of the fights.
They wrapped it up for you.
And I kind of felt like I still want to go back and watch SummerSlam because the highlight package suggested that there were some interesting things that happened. But did I watch SummerSlam? I think based on what I've described, Chad, that's a yes, right?
You watched enough of it to, I mean, you certainly you watched parts of it. Yes, we'll say you watched.
I didn't just hear what happened in the Cody Rhodes match, and I didn't just hear that LA Knight is a new champion, and I kind of want to watch that match. I kind of like that guy.
Yeah, LA's pretty good. He's pretty good. Brandon, I watched it. I was thoroughly entertained. There's a lot of great stuff. In case you haven't watched back, Brandon, on all the different, spoiler alerts and everything, I thought the theater was great. I thought they carried out a lot of what they needed to. I predicted one of the things, fairly obvious thing to predict, but I wish they had leaned in a little harder on a couple of them, but overall, it's pretty good. It was good stuff. Nothing better than a good SummerSlam swerve. And they had some SummerSlam swerves.
What they didn't allow for me to do, Chad, was I tried this throughout. I just wanted to restart. I kept waiting for Peacock to give me the opportunity
to replay it.
Replay it. And then once all of it, and that's what so I had it on and I was waiting, and then they didn't let me replay it. I don't know if I can watch it now, but immediately afterwards, it wasn't replayable.
I got you. Yeah, I didn't go back through it till Sunday morning is when I went through it. So
was it replaying on Sunday morning?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I'll go back and rewatch the whole thing then, because I was trying to watch it Saturday night afterwards and it wasn't letting me.
Yeah, there's some good stuff. Good theater. Brandon, thank you for that question. Also, Mark says, Chad, did you hear Mark Henry's son is signed with WWE? I did not hear that, Mark, but I'm excited about that prospect. And you know what? I'm going to Raw next Monday night at the Moody Center. Let's have a Jacob and Mark Henry run-in. Can we do that? Can we have like a crazy dusty finish to a match where those two come in and save the day for somebody? Come on, Mark. There we go. Let's get it done. Catch, we've got
somebody asked a question about my list and how they were put together. It was about I wanted to answer this question from Chad. Are your lists set up as athletes who were born and raised there only or went to universities in those states also? This is incredibly subjective. Like, who the hell am I to decide where a guy's from? For instance, let me give you a complicated one. Andy Roddick. Apparently, Andy Roddick claims to be from Nebraska. But he lived in Austin from age 4 through 11 and then moved to Florida after that. And then while living in Florida, took online classes to get his high school degree from the University of Nebraska. It's complicated. So with a guy like Roddick, being born from a place didn't qualify you. For me, you had to raise and spend the majority of your formative years in an area.
So you in the end, you considered Roddick Texas.
In the end, I didn't consider Roddick for anybody.
Oh, okay.
Because I didn't quite. My thought was they needed to be almost in the state where they were living in, where they really started playing the sport and developing was. For instance, I'm born in Waco, but my hometown is Austin. So I thought about it kind of like that. There were some tricky calls. I didn't count Shaquille O'Neal for Texas. He moved to Texas right before the start of his junior year in high school. Is he really from Texas? Or, and I'm not even saying that I have the right answers. But I went athlete by athlete, every single athlete on all. So 50 states, 500 athletes. And then the others that I went and checked their Wikipedia pages on every single athlete to make sure that it wasn't. I tried to make it so that states weren't getting credit for guys. Bill Russell was born in Louisiana, but moved to California when he was 6. And then from 6 for the rest of his life was from California.
Yeah.
He's a California athlete. But there will be people who will say, well, no, he was born in Louisiana. You'd be surprised at how many athletes were born in a state and then moved to California most of the time. That, their families needed jobs or things like that. And so where guys were born, there were just a lot of athletes that when they were 2 years old, moved someplace and stayed there all the way through high school until they went on to do whatever it is that they were going to do. And I always looked at where they grew up and were raised more so. Where they were born didn't matter a ton to me. It mattered. It just didn't. Where were they raised? That's how I did it. But there were Oregon didn't have 10 guys. Bob Lilly moved to Oregon right before either his junior or senior year in high school. It's the only one on the list that I gave a pity because I was like, Bob Lilly's not going to make the list otherwise. So why not let Oregon have him?
Yeah. That's interesting that you did that for him, but you didn't do that for Shaq in Texas because that's the same time period.
I know. And look, I'm being honest about it. That was about pity. If Oregon had a legit list.
Right. You knew Texas had a badass list and they didn't need Shaq.
Well, it felt like I would be stat padding, trying to count Shaq.
Would he have made the top 10?
Oh, yeah. Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah.
As it is, Shaq didn't make the list for anybody.
Right.
And there were a few of those. Andy Roddick is another one. I could almost justify that Andy Roddick could have made the Florida list. Is him or Vince Carter? It's fair conversation. It's Lion and Tiger, but he only moved to Florida to play tennis. And so is that where he was raised? Again, It was real crystal clear for 90% of the athletes, but there were 10% of the athletes where I had to make a call and I tried to consistently focus on where they were raised.
Yes. And yes, Chad, they are on OB. So go check out those lists. They are all there on Orange Blood.
And thank God people have actually enjoyed reading that because my fear, Chad, right before I hit post this morning, I was like, I just did this and there's 15 things pinned on Orange Bloods and in the middle of practice and nobody's going to read it. And was it really worth all of the effort that I put in? I don't know that I can say yes to that no matter what. Was it really worth it? But it was interesting. And at least people seemed interested in the discussion.
Yeah.
There was a little brief moment where I was like, holy crap. I stayed up till 2 a.m. working on this and I could have been sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm also with S. Roan 45 here. Listen to Bob Lilly talk. I don't see how you could put him in Oregon. Roan, I'm with you. Because I remember growing up hearing he was from Throckmorton, and I thought, that's good. He's a Throckmorton boy. But
it was either list him with Oregon or he doesn't make the list.
Or he doesn't make the Texas list. I got you.
Oregon, look, the thing is, real quick, let me read Oregon's top 10, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Before I put Bob Lilly in the number one spot, I had Steve Prefontaine, Danny Ainge at number 3.
Wow.
Can I just stop there?
You can. You've made your point. You have made your point. Bob Lilly's from Oregon, folks.
Yeah. He played his senior year in high school at Oregon.
They need him.
And they need it. Let Oregon have Bob Lilly, for God's sake.
Oregon gets Bob Lilly. I agree. I am now with you on that decision making.
I got to number 3, and I'm Danny Ainge.
Yeah, you're done. You have made your point. We got some super chats lining up, and we do appreciate you for that. Real quick, let me tell you about one more of our great partners, and that is Sinus and Snoring Specialists. Every single night, I appreciate Sinus and Snoring Specialists as long as I'm sleeping. Can't remember the last time I did an all-nighter. So it's every night. Sinus and Snoring Specialists helping me feel better, sleep better, rest better. Just get it taken care of. Whatever it is, that snoring that's driving you crazy, the sleep apnea that you know you have, and you know it could get worse. You know other things could be coming if you let that sleep apnea go into your 40s, 50s, 60s. Do what I did back in 2017. Go into Sinus and Snoring Specialist, meet Dr. Slaughter in the first consultation, and he'll start talking about all the options they've got for you, both surgical and non-surgical. You've heard about Inspire, go find out more. You've heard about CPAP, go find out more. I had a procedure called the balloon sinuplasty. It is groundbreaking stuff in ear, nose, and throat. And Dr. Slaughter helped to develop it. Let him explain it to you at Sinus and Snoring Specialist, sinussnoringent.com or 601-0303. Sinus and Snoring Specialist. Feel clear, rested, and healthy. All right. We've got super chats lined up. Let's just get the sad one out of the way. Our guy Wes jumps in and asks for $5. Buy or sell? Chad has finished Band of Brothers. It's a sell. It's a sell, Wes.
Have you even started Band of Brothers?
I've started. I think I'm on episode 3. Wes, I blame Carmi and the crew at the Bear in Chicago. I had to duck out to go get the Bear season done because I'm a sucker for Jeremy Allen White and his talent. I will now refocus on Band of Brothers. So I'm sorry.
Bear thought. Great season without spoilers. Great season, but not fun. It missed some fun.
Yeah, I don't know that I would go as far as describing it as great. I thought it was a very good season of television. It got way too into itself in season 3.
Well, I think it got into itself in season 2. I think it did a lot of what it missed. There was no Forks episode.
Well, they leaned in too hard on what made season 2 at times truly great, and they thought they could just lean in on some of those things. And
I thought season 2 was all time.
Season 2 was terrific. Season 3 was too specific. Season 3 was, it just got like they tried to make their point on one episode, and then they just kept trying to make it. Like it just didn't. It didn't all come together.
It was a great 10-episode season, but there was that didn't have the euphoric highs
right
that it has had in previous seasons, which for me made those other seasons all-time great. So 10 episodes of The Bear is better, life is better than we would otherwise have without them. But yes. I did want a little bit more, but it was great. I still thought it was great. I'm stunned that Band of Brothers has been on a pause point.
I know Band of Brothers. I still have not finished it. It's one of those things for me. I've really got to force myself to push through like serious content stuff like that. It's just not something I'm drawn to. If I'm like, oh, I want to relax and just really have some band, that's not the first thing that pops in my head. So I got to make myself do it. I will do it. All right. Jay threw us this buy or sell for $2. Buy or sell. Galindo had the best job ever. Jay, I would argue that's a sell. Pat Sajak had the best job ever. His schedule and the money he made at Wheel of Fortune, it's better than about anything I can think of.
I was going to say Bobby Bonilla has the best job ever.
Ooh, Bobby Bonilla, that contract was good call. It's a good call. That's still got a few years on it. Galindo certainly did have a great job there. And
I'm guessing Galindo would trade for the Bobby Bonilla job if he could.
I think he would. And I'm assuming with the work that Galindo's done with ESPN Plus games and stuff, I'm assuming he's still going to be around doing games. We will see. And Matthew throws in a $4.99 super chat. Is Texas RBU, which room under Sark, jumps into the debates for the other U's? I think tight end.
They got a long way to go. You know, they could very quickly get themselves back into the DBU conversation if they just went on a 3 to 5 year run where they put some guys into first round draft picks, and then it's like, oh, look at all the DBs that they've had. You can at least put them back in the conversation of that. We know LSU, we know Miami, we know that there are other schools that make the case to that. I still think Texas is running back you. The volume of Hall of Fame running backs that don't even, and when I mean Hall of Fame running backs, I mean legitimately in the College Football Hall of Fame. Texas got a dozen of them, but they're so deep at the top that you oftentimes have guys like Roosevelt Leaks or Chris Gilbert, or you could just go through. They're just the names don't stop. It's one after another. Even a guy like Eric Metcalf, like those guys are outside of the top 10 in a lot of cases. Yeah, no, for me, Texas is still running back you. You can take their top 5 guys and you can put them up next to anybody. And you can take their top 2 and Ricky and Earl, and you can put those up next to anybody. Now, there are other schools that would say, you know, a USC might say, well, we've got OJ, we've got Marcus Allen. Fair enough. You can be in the conversation, but it's almost like I can't acknowledge that anybody is better than the Earl-Ricky combo. I just can't.
Yeah, I would think, Matthew, that's a great question. And I think by the end of Sark's time, I wonder, will Texas also have any kind of argument at wide receiver Will he continue to recruit?
They're so far away from that. They'd have to start from scratch almost.
Right. But it's like, will there be enough of a group considering, you know, I mean, the energy that Xavier Worthy just put into that discussion? Can they actually get something there? I don't know, but I would agree with Ketch on the running back thing. It is a silly group.
By the way, the good stuff on the Gold Zone hasn't happened. We're in women's hammer throw, wrestling, men's 1,500 meters. Let's do a few more super chats before we go.
Still got time. We still have time, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see what else there is. Oh,
did you see this one?
Let me see what we got. Super chat. Oh, good Lord. Buy or sell. Cowboys crash and burn in the playoffs, and they draft Quinn in 2025. Oh, sell. Sell the backside. Front side. Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Quinn's not happening. No.
You know what? Buy. Because they don't want to pay. They don't want to pay Dak. And if they crash out, Jerry's want to get out from the Dak experience.
Yeah, so, but it won't be Quinn Ewers.
Why not?
Because that would show forethought. That would show like talent, you know, breakdown. That would show a little bit of forethought. That would show, you know, that would be a move that your fans might enjoy. It would be, you know,
to quote Ben Stiller in Dodgeball. Touche.
Yeah, it's just, I don't think that's where their brain would go. But thank you for that, Esron, one of our favorite chatters, jumping in there.
Rising up the list in the last couple of weeks.
He really is. Yeah, Esron 45 is becoming a really solid. Sounds like a name of a robot in a movie. Esron 45. I like that name, and it's definitely rising up the list. Catch. I like this one earlier, so I marked it. I wanted to get your nerdy football thought on Colby's question here. Who's the flat out, more skins on the wall, better offensive line coach between offensive line coaches between OU and Texas? So he wants a beaten ball versus flood, no holds barred, falls count anywhere match. Who wins?
Beaten ball.
Yeah.
Here's what I would say. It's a good question, and I just took a hit, so I'm probably going to be stoned when I answer it. So you're going to get the best version of me. I think when it comes to taking, thank you, Chad. I think when it comes to taking unheralded guys and turning them into things, I think beaten ball's better than flood. Now, they both do good jobs, but the difference is beaten ball has taken unheralded guys and turned them into great players and NFL players. Flood, in his history as a coach, now look, this may change as soon as Cam Williams, maybe, but it hasn't happened yet. In his career, Flood is 0 for 30 in recruiting and developing sub 4-star linemen into NFL players. It's never happened. It's never. Whereas Oklahoma has had a little bit more beating ball specifically has had a little bit more success with those type of players. Where I think Flood has an edge on beating ball, and look where this is probably most relevant with the conversations that we have on this channel. Flood, when he gets 5-star guys, they turn into first-round draft picks. So you give him a Kelvin Banks, you give him the Evan Neals of the world. You think about some of the guys that Alabama took that were 5-star guys, and those guys turn into NFL players. So his experience of taking elite guys and then turning them into not NFL players, but top of the draft NFL players, I think he has an edge over beating ball in that area. So I'm a little more impressed by taking the nobodies and turning them into NFL guys. But, you know, if I was a 5-star offensive line prospect, if I was Michael Fasusi, the guy that I would feel most comfortable about leaning into my development would actually be Kyle Flood. Because you can look at his track record with prospects like Kelvin Banks, like Evan Neal. I mean, the list kind of goes on and on and on. He has been successful there. Even going back to Rutgers when the best prospect when he was the head coach at Rutgers that he signed in his entire career was Anthony Davis. And he turned Anthony Davis into a first-round draft pick coming out of Rutgers as an offensive lineman. You know, this guy, his entire career, when he gets elite talent, produces elite results. So it's really, really close. It comes down to kind of the eye of the beholder, the subjectiveness of what are you most impressed with. They're elite. They're both. It's like, you know, who should be the starting pitcher in an all-star game? And it's like, oh, is it Pedro or is it Randy Johnson? I mean, pick your all-time greatness. But it's like, oh, who's the quarterback in the AFC in the Pro Bowl? Is it Brady or Mahomes? You know, I mean, you could have an opinion on who you think should be the starter, but you're talking about elite of the elite with both of them. And for Texas, it's disappointing that such a critical target of all of the pieces of Oklahoma that they have to deal with, they're dealing with the best piece. That, you know, why can't that guy coach running backs?
Right.
Why isn't the running backs coach at Oklahoma the best part of what they do? It's the offensive line coach. And you can't be such a homer, and you can't let confirmation bias overtake you to such a degree that you can't acknowledge that guy's elite.
Colby, thank you for that chat. One more that I had marked, Catch, before we wrap it up, and we'll kind of circle back around to the recruiting discussion to start. Remember, Khyree Lockett tomorrow at noon. So right at the beginning of the show, his decision is going to be happening. Catch, we got this one in earlier from Vivek. I hope the Duncanville quarterback doesn't sway Lockett to Bama. I hear he's recruiting him hard. You mentioned Bama. As you know, if it's not Texas, you were thinking it could end up being Bama. Any thought to that? I mean, it's a Duncanville quarterback and it's a Saxy receiver, but just could be the idea of kind of Dallas area guys that know each other. And let me see if I get the name. It's Keelan Russell is the Duncanville quarterback, right? The idea that Keelan Russell might be trying to pull him towards Tuscaloosa.
I think Texas will have a better NIL package. I think Texas is closer to home. I think he walks in as a freshman and Arch Manning is his quarterback. That's not really the case with Keelan Russell. I mean, that's not to say that Alabama will have bad quarterback play, but I'm reminded of what DeCorian Moore said when he was being recruited. He came into that visit for Texas, and at the time, LSU had a quarterback from Bryce Underwood, that had a commit from Bryce Underwood. Texas had KJ Lacey's commitment, and he was being asked about how do you weigh the quarterback thing when both teams have high-level quarterback commitments in your recruiting class. And he was like, look, man, I don't care about who the quarterback is in my class. I care about who the quarterback is, QB1.
Yeah.
The whole time I'm there, who's QB1? So I'm not saying that Lockett would view the world the same way, but it is a way to think about it. And I think Alabama's got a little bit more of a question mark long-term wise post Jalen Milroe than Texas does as we all wait for the Arch Manning era to begin. I expect Khyree Lockett to end up at Texas.
And that'll be tomorrow. Hopefully for you Texas fans, that will be the case right about 12, 12:05, 12:10. Who knows? It might take till 12:30, but we will get you our immediate reaction when it happens. Catch anything else we need to hit today?
I'll just hit this last thing before we go. I wanted to answer Chad's question. Christian Jones was a 3-star, and yes, Kyle Flood developed the hell out of him. But Christian Jones was also a starting offensive lineman before he showed up. Christian Jones was, and he didn't recruit him. So, look, I would never suggest that he can't develop. All I'm telling you is when it comes to guys that he selected and then developed, for instance, because the reason why this matters, I can't go to the last years that he was at Alabama and ding him for guys that he never coached. So just like you can't ding him for guys that he never coached, that he recruited, they went to Alabama, and if they didn't make it, it's not his fault. Can't blame Tommy Brockermeyer's lack of success on Kyle Flood. The same way you can't do that in this particular instance. He didn't recruit. He didn't handpick Christian Jones. And the selection and development is a key part of this. When we talk about what Kyle Flood likes in a football player, he likes big guys. And so those are the ones that we're going to keep score on. But just for full transparency, you're not wrong. And I wouldn't suggest that he didn't do it at Rutgers. I have to go back and look at Alabama. But yeah, he took Christian Jones and turned him into an NFL draftable player, a really good player. Honestly, does it matter? Because the only guys that we're really concerned about right now are Michael Fasusi, and Michael Fasusi doesn't have to worry about Christian Jones's recruitment and ranking and development. All he has to do is Kelvin Banks. That's it. How did you do most recently with an elite of the elite left tackle? Kelvin Banks started every game he was here. He's going to be a high first-round draft pick. He's going to be a multi-year All-American, barring injuries. And, most recently, I don't know that Beatonball has that.
Chad, thank you for that chat. And thank you, everybody, for liking and subscribing and getting your notifications. Up over 650 folks in the Specs chat as we get ready to close the doors. And if you're a Longhorn fan, Catch gave you the preview earlier, but Olympic stuff coming up in the next half hour or so as we wrap this up on a Tuesday. Men's basketball team, of course, with Kevin Durant. They're in the quarters now, quarterfinal round, I believe, against Brazil coming up today. And then is it Julian Alfred? I always forget her first name.
Julian, yes.
Thank you.
I-E-N.
Julian Alfred, trying to continue that resume as the most badass female athlete that may have ever worn burnt orange and done anything. She's going for that 200 championship at about, what would you say, 240?
Yes.
Central time? Okay, that's a little later on. Gold Zone, or find the channel for that. Best of luck to all those Longhorn athletes trying to add some Olympic medals to their resume. And we will be back tomorrow at noon. Khyree Lockett makes his decision right about that time. We will get you our reaction as soon as that goes down.
Hey,
also,
and Chad,
yeah.
I think just because you're wrapping up, I got one more thing to say.
Okay.
Beatonball doesn't have a Kelvin Banks. He's never signed a 5-star since he's been at Oklahoma. When we look at the super blue chips that Beatonball has signed since he's been at Oklahoma, Caden Green just transferred. Aaron Parks, I don't remember. Do you remember Aaron Parks?
Don't recognize the name.
That was in 2020. Tremonda Moore was in 2018. He was a high 4-star. Bray Walker in 2018, pretty good player. But he's not once in his career taken an elite offensive line prospect and turned him into a first-round draft pick. I mean, I'm looking at the names. The super blue chips that he has signed in his career since he's been at Oklahoma was Caden Green, Aaron Parks, Tremonda Moore, Bray Walker. That's it. None of those guys are Kelvin Banks. And none of those guys are like – so if you're Texas and you're talking about your offensive line coach, I think you just go to a Rivals.com database and go, hey, man, you recognize any of these names? No? Okay, now we're going to flip it to Texas. Do you know who Kelvin Banks is? You like that? I'm channeling my inner Kirk Cousins. Yeah. You like that? Because there's a little bit of that. And I think if you're Texas, that's your sales pitch. Your sales pitch is our guy takes elite guys and makes them elite of the elite. That other guy, he's really good, but he's never done once in his career what our guy does on the regular. And that needs to be the sales pitch. And then you throw in the quality of life, the NIL money, all of the things else that go, the better education, no offense, but like Oklahoma's shitty school. I mean, they let everybody in. And I think that's your pitch. That's your pitch. And if Texas hasn't and isn't able to hit that home, then they failed. Because I think the recruiting pitch is easy. The recruiting pitch is, man, that guy is good. But do you really want to go to a place where the coach has never once in his entire life handled somebody with your level of talent? Not one time. And the closest thing that he's ever had have never panned out? Would you really want to do that? Because we've got Kelvin Banks. Like, I would just say that over and over and over again. We have Kelvin Banks, and that really good offensive line coach at Oklahoma has never had anybody like him, ever. You're like Kelvin Banks. Do you want to go to the school that is turning Kelvin Banks into a multimillionaire, or do you want to take your chance and go play with somebody who's never done that before?
Sounds like we're going to hear that sales pitch a couple times between now and August 21st. And Michael,
see what happens when you let me have a little rogue?
That's it.
Sarkisian, see, they need to take notes sometimes. If they're not already doing that, I have to believe that they are. But if I can take a hit off of Rogue and then be like, this needs to be the sales pitch, and it's undeniable, it cannot be defeated. Nothing I said was subjective. That's the thing. If an Oklahoma fan's watching right now, oh, can't you and your that's not bias. I've just literally read out loud to you what's happened. It's all factual. So the part about me kind of digging on Oklahoma's school and calling it a scrub school, it's true, but there was definitely some subjectiveness behind that. I mean, nobody's ever gone out of their way to try to get into Oklahoma.
All right, Catch, you good?
Yeah.
All right, here's my sales pitch to end the show. OrangeBloods.com is where you want to be for all your practice updates later on in the afternoon. We're finishing up about 2:15 or so, and in an hour, practice will start, which means this afternoon and evening, there's going to be practice reports and notes and pictures on OrangeBloods.com. Check that out. 6 o'clock, Football with Friends with Alex and Cody breaking down everything that was seen at practice. Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, you got the recruiting show. Of course, you got Old Fashioned tomorrow at 9 a.m. 10 a.m. is the recruiting show. And 12 noon, we're back here on House Divided for the Khyree Lockett commitment. Is that enough for you? Thanks for liking and subscribing and getting your notifications to Orange Bloods Live. Until tomorrow at